Hi, I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rita. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate this opportunity. So we'll get started with an overview of what the webinar will cover, and um, we'll carry on. So the overall goal of today's session is to give everyone as thorough as possible an introduction to the details of MET Go, so that you come away understanding the content, a detailed description of each section, as well as a few preparation strategies for each section. So for the listening, the reading, the writing, and the speaking sections. We'll go over the types of items, the parts, and the skills tested. We will also give you an overview of the score reporting, which is one of the unique features of this exam. And at the end, that will last about roughly 45 minutes. And at the end, we have time set aside for your questions and answers, which we hope you will have. So I'll turn it over now to Rachel for an overview of MET Go.
So MET Go is a secure multi-level test. One of the wonderful things about it is that you could administer it to students from a class that have completely different levels of English, and it will test students at all levels from A1 beginner to B2 to B1 lower intermediate on the CEFR, the Common European Framework for Reference. This test is designed for test takers ages 11 through 15, so early teens age range, and it's a bridge between our MYLE and our MET test. So MYLE is specifically targeted to younger learners, and MET is mainly for late teenagers to adults and people attending university. As I mentioned before, it tests from levels A1 through B1, and there are 4 skills on MET Go. As Rita mentioned before, we have listening, we have reading, writing, and speaking, and the speaking part of the test is actually optional. So each part of the test lasts 30 minutes, and speaking is an additional 10 minutes. There is a flexible scheduling option for MET Go. It can be provided on demand, meaning that our centers are welcome to contact us and request a test date a few weeks in advance, and we will provide all of the materials. So you can choose whatever date is most convenient for you and your students at any time of the year. One thing about giving this test to younger learners is that we wanted to have full color, vibrant illustrations. So you can see with MET Go, as we'll pass through each part of the test, that the illustrations just reflect this age range, and we wanted to make it as vibrant and fun for them as possible. It is paper and pencil based, and every student that takes MET is offered a score report complete with personalized feedback. And we'll talk about that later at the end of the presentation and give you some information on how that works.
Let's see.
Go back to our poll?
I think we should go back to the poll. So it looks like we have the majority of people, 67%, have looked at the sample test or the Ready, Set, Go pages on our website, on the Michigan Language Assessment website, which is great. And equal numbers of you have either started preparing your students for MET Go or say that MET Go is new to you. So great. And before I continue, I wanted to mention as well that this webinar is just one of the many resources we have available to you as you're preparing students and as you're learning about the test. We have a sample test that's free and downloadable, available on our website. The Ready, Set, Go pages on our website have a lot of the information that we will be presenting today in this webinar are included there. And of course, with other links to some of the materials that we'll be referring to. And lastly, some of the examples we'll show you today are taken from the brand new practice test books, which comes also with the teacher's answer pack. And these are available for purchase from the U of M Press. They contain 4 full practice tests of MET Go. So we will be, and watch your emails. I also forgot to mention at the beginning, watch your email after in a couple of days for a survey as well as a link to the presentation slides, the recording, and a handout, which will include all of the links that we refer to here in case you're not familiar, and you can have them all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
So, great. Moving forward, in fact, are we going to start with the next poll? Just to keep you guys going, we'll start, before we go into the details of the format of the exam, we have one more poll, which is, what do you think is the most important feature to consider in a test for young teens? So there's no right or wrong answer, as in the other one.
We're curious to know what you think.
We are very curious just to get your thoughts. So we'll come back to that in a minute. The format of MET Go, each section of the listening, reading, and writing sections lasts 30 minutes. The listening section has 5 parts. The reading section has 2 parts, and both of those sections have 30 items each. The writing section has 3 parts and also takes 30 minutes. And the speaking section has 4 parts, although 3 of them are rated. The first part is a warm-up. And that entire speaking section of the test takes 10 minutes and is optional. The content of the exam is based on topics relevant to young adolescents and as much as possible includes authentic tasks that they will find motivating and familiar. The domains, the topic domains, are drawn from educational, personal, and public topics. So a variety of content, all of it relevant to and relatable to the preteen and early teen ages. Let's see, should we go and see how our second poll did? How many do we have? Enough to close it? Okay, it's ended. Whoops, second poll. All right, so 67% of you want to discuss the polls, Rachel?
Sure. So 67% of you thought that a variety of task types was important when considering a test for young teens. 33% thought it was the relatable content aspect, and then colorful images and comprehensive vocabulary and grammar didn't get many votes. But I think that the great part about MET Go is that it kind of encompasses all of these things. So you will see that there is a wide variety of task types. We try to make the content relatable to teens in every way. And then there's the added bonus of the colorful graphics and a very comprehensive grammar and vocabulary section. So,
and if you haven't seen the test yet online, we'll be showing you, but the graphics are definitely one of the most appealing things for this age range.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so starting in on the listening section, which I already mentioned, has 5 parts and 30 items. It takes 30 minutes. The audio script input for all the sections is played twice, which is, often can be very reassuring to both the teachers and students. The questions are written in the test booklet and spoken on the audio, and in almost all cases, the questions are also played twice. The skills that are needed and that are assessed on MET Go include global skills and local skills. Global skills like understanding main ideas and getting the gist of what a speaker is saying or what an announcement is about, as well as local skills like identifying concrete and familiar vocabulary words, understanding a speaker's purpose or attitude, and of course being able to answer short WH questions and yes/no questions. So we'll go into detail now on each part with some samples. Most of the samples that we will show you, the sample items, are taken from the sample test available online. Some of them come from the practice test book. So part 1 includes 4 items and is all based on the same illustration, the same picture, which has 6 labeled people in the picture, and 4 of them are the correct answer to one of the questions. So The sample audio goes like this.
Look at the picture, listen to some information. Find the person to answer the question. Benjamin is next to his mother. He is holding a toy car. Which person is Benjamin? And of course, the answer is B.
B. And then there are 3 other questions about other people in the picture. Part 2 of the listening also has 4 items. And the task here is to select answers to dialogue questions. They're pretty much 1-line dialogue questions, and then 3 different responses which are printed in the test booklet. So what the students hear is, for example, a question like,
what kind of snacks do you have?
And the answers you see on the screen: everything is $1, we have fruit and cookies, or they're closed today. Of course, the correct answer, B. Part 3 of the listening gets back to some illustrations where the illustrations are actually the responses, the options for answers. So again, there are 4 items. The task is to select the correct picture from a choice of 3 that answers the question about a short dialogue. And to give you an idea of this, we'll read out an example for this current set of pictures.
Sure. What did you get for lunch today, Anthony?
Well, I wanted a burger, but there weren't any left, so I had pizza.
Oh, too bad. Maybe they'll have some tomorrow. What did the boy eat? Of course, the answer is?
The answer is C. He had pizza.
Pizza.
Okay. Moving on to part 4. Part 4 includes 3 conversations. In each conversation has 3 questions about it, so 9 items in total. And these, the task is to answer questions about a longer conversation. So you can see the transcript here, the audio script, that would be the audio, which we will read out for you. And before we do that, just also wanted to mention that the illustration for part 4, as well as part 5, as you'll see in a minute, is called a scene setter. What we call a scene setter, and the illustrations here are meant to basically activate the test taker's background knowledge and get them, just sort of in the frame of mind of the topic that they're going to hear. It has nothing to do with the questions per se, and doesn't certainly give away any details about any of the answers. So the sample for this one.
Hi, Hannah. How is everything?
Everything's great. I haven't seen you around lately.
Yeah, I went to visit my grandparents for a couple weeks. It was fun.
Where do your grandparents live?
They live in the mountains, close to a big lake. There is a lot to do there. I went hiking, swimming, fishing, but my favorite thing was spending time with my cousins.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was. I can't wait to go back. What are the speakers talking about?
And the answer would be the boys'
recent trip.
So that would be a main idea question, and there would probably be, at least one more that's, a detailed question or a vocabulary question. So, all right, and moving on to part 5, it's similar to part 4 in that there are 3 talks, 9 items, and we're not going to read this one out for you, but it's basically answering questions about a brief announcement. So this is monologic, it's one speaker and a little bit longer. So again, 3 questions, some of them main idea, some of them vocabulary or local details.
Right.
And this one, what will the teacher do at 6:30? And the question here is check that students have arrived. So that does it for the item types for the 5 parts of the listening section. And now we'll show you give you a few ideas for practice suggestions. So hopefully you can see, based on the items that we just went over, that the idea is not to get what you do in your classes, the way that listening is taught, should lead them towards success in this section of the test. Your task, in order to make sure they're getting enough practice, is to provide them opportunities to hear a variety of different voices So different, male, female, older, younger. And here, make sure that they're hearing speakers of North American English, since that's the dialect that they'll be hearing on the audio. Make sure they have opportunity to hear both monologues and two-person conversations. Give them an opportunity to take notes while they're listening to, especially a monologic passage. And maybe, write or retell main ideas of what they hear, answer WH questions, and so on.
I think it's important also to note that a lot of the speakers that we have for the MET Go listening section are teens, and with a mix of some adults, in the teacher role or the parent role. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's right. The voices that they will hear are relatable. Mm-hmm. They are younger voices. Yeah. So some of the activities that we have available on the MET Go, the Ready, Set, Go pages of the MET Go part of our website, it's under the teachers page right now, are a variation of an activity that is similar to part 3 of the listening test, which includes more than just 3 of the images, 9 all at once, and then some sentences that they listen to. And some of them, they go from a little bit simpler where the word itself is mentioned and they have to put down which word is mentioned, to a dialogue that may be about that thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's just sort of a scaffolding activity that leads to a very similar task as they find on part 3 of the test. So the step 1 here would be to review key vocabulary words with them that are represented in the pictures, and then play the audio. You can practice this set of skill using any sets of pictures, whether it's 2 or 3 pictures or, a dozen small images, and they could be from textbooks that you already use, from websites, or even from students' photo collections. Moving on now to the reading section. The reading section has 2 parts, 30 questions and 30 minutes, just like the listening. And the skills tested on reading are word and phrase level grammar. So there's not a separate grammar section, but the first part of the reading is more grammar type items, vocabulary and grammar. They need to be able to understand both general and topic-specific vocabulary. They need to be able to get at what the author's attitude or opinion is. Of course, understanding details, identifying reference, so pronominal reference, which you'll see an example of in one of the readings we show you, and being able to interpret dialogue in, for example, a story, a narrative, as well as being able to skim and scan text, especially with informational passages, as you'll see in a minute. So part 1 of the reading is the grammar and vocabulary questions. There are 16 items, and they're multiple choice, fill in the blank, a very familiar format. They're broken up into 2 separate thematic sets, and they include, as I already said before, general and topic-specific vocabulary. Like the parts 4 and 5 of the listening, there is a scene-setting illustration that again just activates some background knowledge, vocabulary that they might encounter or think about as they're answering these questions. So we're not going to read over the questions here, but you can see, they each have 3 options like the other multiple choice.
First sample question would be an example of the vocabulary question, right. And then the second one would be an example of a grammar.
Right. The second part of the reading has 4 texts. 2 of them are informational texts, including, for example, things like advertisements, emails, websites, menus, flyers, and so on. And 2 texts are narrative, so a very short little story. There are 14 total items, and for each passage would include between 3 and 6 multiple choice questions. They also include a scene setting illustration that just provides some context for the topic.
Right.
And we'll show you a couple of examples. The sample question, the first part of part 2 is the informational text. And here you see essentially an advertisement or flyer for a cafe. The first question.
What is the text mostly about?
And the correct answer would be a new business.
Mm-hmm.
And question 2.
What offer is being made for students?
And then you see that when they read the details below, the answer is
special lunch
prices. Right.
$7.
Question 1, as you can see, really a skimming and scanning skill would be what would be needed to answer this. Of course, they can read the whole thing and then answer it as well. But just looking at the images and the layout and all of that should help them answer that kind of a question. All right, so the second type of passage for the part 2 of the reading is a narrative text. And again, we chose 2 example questions here. One is a global or main idea question. What is the story mostly about? It's about a festival. And question 2 is a question about a referent.
Mm-hmm. In the last sentence of paragraph 1, what does there mean? So you can see they eat food, dance to music, and play games there. And there is referring back to the festival, first part of the paragraph.
Right. All right, so now that you've seen the item types, what are some practice suggestions? So for reading, again, the kinds of things that you would normally include in your curriculum. Things like reading authentic informational texts, making sure that they are familiar with what a simple website looks like in English and so on. Identifying keywords and details in anything that they read. Reading short narrative stories. Answering comprehension questions, of course. And then giving them opportunities to share what they've read, either orally or in writing or both. Mm-hmm. And a specific example would be a scaffolded reading practice like this, where you have a flyer about picture day, and you would start by some vocabulary review and pre-reading. Just looking at the image, what do you think you're going to be reading about? What vocabulary words might you expect to find on this kind of a flyer? And then go into step 2, which is a skimming scanning, as well as an information chart that they fill out, including things like who, what, where, and when that they find out, details from the flyer, and then lastly, some actually questions for comprehension, similar to what they would see on the test part of that section. Mm-hmm. Moving on, Rachel.
So now we'll move on to talk about the writing section. So in the writing section, there are 3 different parts. There's a total of 30 minutes to complete the entire writing section. And there are some thematic illustrations that accompany part 1 of the test. See that in just a minute. The test takers actually handwrite their responses in the test booklet, so they're able to write by hand. And the 3 different parts of the test require certain skills, for example, describing a sequential narration of events with some scaffolding, as you'll see, writing about a personal experience and expressing a preference or opinion, and of course, giving some supporting details to back that up. So in the first part of the test, we asked that the students tell a story based on 3 images. So they're given this visual prompt, and it's three different images, kind of like a comic strip. And basically, it's a story that's happening within the images, and we would like for them to write about what's happening in the story. So you can see in the first panel, there's a boy, he's walking down the street, he looks in the window, wants a guitar, doesn't have the money. So in the second panel, he gets a job to save money for the guitar, he's thinking about it the whole time. And in the third image, he finally goes to the store to buy the guitar. So the students would write their response, about 3 to 4 sentences. We would look for them to write about each of the panels in the image, so the whole sequence of events. And yes, it's only about 20 words, and so it's a pretty short task, but with some visual scaffolding to make sure that they kind of follow and to give them an example of what's going on. The second part of the writing task is a correspondence task, and so students will write to a student in another country about a school trip that they took. And we have provided some scaffolding in terms of bullet points of just certain features that we want them to respond to within this task. So kind of to help them think about what to say. So where did you go on a school trip, or about a school trip that you took? So where did you go on the school trip? When did you go? What did you like about the school trip and why? And we would expect about 1 paragraph of a response for this part of the test. For the third part of the writing test, it's about writing about a personal preference or opinion. So this is kind of the more traditional essay, if you will, although students of this level, A1 through B1, they might not be familiar with essay writing at this point, and that's okay. We're not expecting them to be. But it kind of follows that traditional prompt. Some people like to travel in a car, other people prefer to take the bus. How do you prefer to travel? Explain your answer. So we would look to see about 2 paragraphs in terms of the response for this part of the test for part 3. So how is the writing section scored? The writing section is actually scored by a pool of trained raters, trained by Michigan Language Assessment. And we use a tool which is kind of a checklist, and we look for the following criteria. So we're thinking about task completion. Did they write a story? Did they write about their experience? Did they give their opinion and use details to support it? We're looking for cohesion. So are they using connective devices, and does the response flow in a way that the reader is able to understand? We're also looking at grammar and vocabulary, both the range and also the complexity and accuracy of grammar and vocab. And then finally, mechanics, so thinking about punctuation, capitalization, and spelling, things like that. So how can you help support your students to prepare for MET Go writing? So providing opportunities where they're able to use short sentences to describe pictures. Again, as Rita said before, it could be any picture. You could ask them to bring in family portraits, bring in a comic strip from the newspaper, because that kind of mirrors this part of the test, part 1. You could ask for them to write short stories based on these pictures. Writing also about opinions and likes and dislikes. So, some people like to do their homework at home. Some people like to do their homework at the library. Which do you prefer? Giving them kind of those options and asking them to back up and support what they prefer. And finally, writing about personal preferences or experiences. So just thinking about a time when you went shopping or a time when you celebrated a holiday, things like that, important life events, or even just daily interactions.
And I'll just add here that because MET Go is a multi-level test, you're going to have a wide range of students who might take the test. At the lower levels, the A1 students are just really getting into writing sentences, and so a picture description might just be a short sentence. Right. Whereas at the higher levels, for those connected writing tasks, you would be looking for a lot of cohesive devices and some transitions and clearer structure to 2 to 3 to 5 sentences.
Absolutely.
So
thinking about some preparation activities, you could start by taking maybe one of the examples that we have on the website or in one of the practice books, presenting your students with the comic strip and asking them what kind of words would they need to describe the story. So thinking about nouns like the ball, the lamp, the boy, the girl, brother or sister, who's in the story, where are they? So different words that they would need in order to write the story. And then answering some questions about the scene could be the next part of it. So what are they doing at the beginning of the story? How does the girl feel in the middle of the story? And what are they thinking at the end of the story, for example? So just asking them some kind of thought-provoking questions and allowing them to write their responses about that. And then finally, asking them to put it all together. As Rita mentioned, you will have students of all different levels, and so Some students that are more at the A1 level might need a little bit of additional scaffolding to complete this part of the test. So you could provide them with the sequence of events that happens in the story and ask them to number the sequence. So, go ahead and take a look and see if you can add your numbers and create the story based on the sequence.
Or at least which one happens first.
Yeah, which one happens first,
last.
right. So let's show them.
I know that's pretty quick, but
yeah,
there
we go. So, you've got the numbers in there, and then based on that, they could actually sit down and start to write, the story about what happens. For some of your higher level B1 test takers, they might not even need that scaffolding. They might just be able to take the nouns, the verbs from the beginning and sit down and just write their story based on that. So it all depends on the kind of students that you have. And you could, of course, create different materials or use different materials to support all the students in your classroom. So that does it for writing. Let's move on to speaking, which is the last part / the optional part of the test. So the speaking test is a face-to-face interaction that happens one-on-one with one test taker and one examiner. And it contains 4 parts. Actually, the first part is just a warm-up, and that's not scored. That's unscored. So it's just about the examiner and the test taker kind of know each other. The examiner asks the test taker just a few questions at the very beginning, and there's no score for that. So the speaking part of the test lasts from about 7 to 10 minutes. We see a variety of ranges for that. And the skills that we look for in the speaking section are about conveying information about a picture, describing a picture and narrating a sequence of events, talking about a personal experience, and then stating a personal preference, and adding some detail to explain and support that preference. So we'll skip over the part 1, which is the warm-up. It's unscored, and we'll move right into part 2. So for this part of the test, we ask the test takers to describe some differences that are found in 2 images. So you can see on the screen there are 2 images that look more or less the same, but there are a few differences. And so the test takers have 90 seconds to just explain what those differences are. So you can see, in the first picture, there are 2 trees. In the second picture, there's only 1. The number of birds, the girl and the boy that are standing on the balcony, lots of different differences in there. So the test takers would have to describe those, and that would be part 2 of the test.
The intro, the speaking examiner starts by giving them an example of one difference.
Right,
and then there are
right.
always plenty more that they can find, and the students, the test takers really love this because it's like a puzzle. And
of course,
yeah.
So the next part of the test, part 3, they're given one image, one visual piece of scaffolding, and the prompt for this one is, tell me what you see in the picture and tell me a story about it. Say as much as you can, and test takers have 60 seconds to answer this question. So Rita's actually going to read out a sample from a real test that was administered, so you can hear what a test taker might say to respond to this part of the speaking test.
Yep. Okay, so this transcript reads, here it's a music class. In the board, there are notes, and she and they, and here the professor. She is like the director. And they play the violin, and he play the triangle. I can see like a coffee, and they learn the things that the professor give us.
Okay. If you'd like to hear some more examples of how students responded to this part of the test, then you can actually go to Ready, Set, Go on MET Go on our website, and you can actually listen to authentic test taker responses for each of these. So the last part of the test, part 4, test takers are going to talk about their personal experience and their opinions. So there are 2 questions that are asked in this part of the test, and the time allotted is 10 seconds for planning for each of the questions, and then 60 seconds to speak. So we wanted to build in that 10 seconds of planning time because this part of the test is asking for students to recall actual experiences or preferences that they might have. So we wanted to give them just a minute to kind of think about that before they were actually asked to respond. So question 1 is talking about personal experience, and that's related to a topic or setting that kind of goes back to the previous part 3 of the speaking prompt. So all these tasks are tied together. So for example, tell me about a time in the past when you went to a concert or listened to music. So they would have 10 seconds to plan, and then they would respond to that question. And then question 2 is about expressing an opinion and giving reasons to support it. Again, also tied back to the previous question and the previous photo prompt. So the sample that the examiner would say, the discourse, some people like to listen to music when they study. Other people prefer to study in a quiet place. What do you think is the best way to study? Give your opinion and reasons to support it. And then the test taker would plan, and they would have 60 seconds in order to. So that is all for the speaking test. How is the speaking section scored? So it's a bit different than the writing section in that the speaking section is scored in real time by the examiner. And what kind of criteria are the test takers rated on? Task completion, so are they completing each part of the test? Are they giving the differences? Are they describing the picture? Are they telling a story? Are they talking about a personal experience, giving details to support it, etc.? We're also looking at the linguistic resources, so the range and accuracy of the vocabulary and the grammar, and the intelligibility, which encompasses the delivery and clarity of the message. Thinking about pronunciation, any pauses or hesitations, that's all factored in and scored. And speaking examiners are trained using a self-access online training program. So that's through our learning portal. And that is how they go through the training. And then every speaking examiner giving a test is qualified and trained to administer and also to rate the test. So what kind of activities and suggestions can we provide you to help train your students for MET Go speaking? You could ask students to talk about their likes, dislikes, and opinions. We all know students can be very opinionated and they like to talk about what they like and what they don't like. So it could be a great place to start. And that can range in terms of lower level test takers saying, I like this, I don't like this, or higher level test takers explaining the reasons for those likes and preferences. You could also ask test takers to describe common objects, places, people, and activities, either just in the class or if they brought in pictures, they could use those to describe the pictures, and that would mirror some of the activities that we have as part of the speaking section of the test. You could ask them to talk about personal experiences. You could ask them to tell a simple story based on pictures. So a picture where there are a lot of things going on and ask them to narrate the story. And also comparing similar pictures. So for the spot the differences, it might be interesting to bring in 2 pictures of different libraries, for example, and asking them to compare what's the same and what's different. So in terms of some practical things that you can use, and all of this is available on our website. You could have them practice their skills by comparing the images in pairs. And you could bring in different types of images or ask them to. So you might want to have them label the images first and then ask them what kind of vocabulary words do you see in the picture. So, you can see in the first picture a guitar, you could see a bed, a boy, a sink, etc. So just thinking about the vocabulary words and getting them to label the picture and so that they can have their resources for when they start speaking about the picture. And then maybe some sentence completion, so thinking about the prepositions of where things are in the picture. So for example, there's a book on the bed, there's a backpack on the floor, the woman is in the doorway, and then some actions. So this can get into kind of looking at the differences in the pictures. For example, the boy is sitting on the bed in picture 2, the boy is standing next to the bed in picture 1. And then finally, putting it all together and asking them to look at some of the differences between the pictures. So that could be an interesting activity to help start preparing your students for MET Go speaking.
Okay.
All right. So what happens after the test? After you administer MET Go, test centers submit all the materials electronically back to Michigan Language Assessment within 3 days. And the score results for this test are sent very quickly, so you will receive the score reports for all of the students who took the test within 10 days after the exam materials are received by Michigan Language Assessment. So each test taker will receive a certificate, and that includes some individualized test taker feedback based on their performance on the test. So the certificate has a few different elements to it. So you'll see that we do provide a score for each of the sections: listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and those scores correspond to a CEFR level. So you have the general CEFR level, and then you have each individual section of the test. It has its own CEFR level that the student has achieved. And then on the next page, you'll see that there is personalized feedback for every single section of the test, as well as some activities or things to do for the test taker in order to help them improve their skills in that specific area. So that is a really unique feature of our test that not many other tests today have. All of our individualized feedback is written in the form of can-do statements. So we wanted it to be motivational for your students. The idea is, to help motivate them to keep studying and to keep working on their English skills, and giving them some resources and some thoughts and activities of how to do that. We wanted to point out some of their strengths and also some areas that they might want to improve, and also how to improve for each skill. So this is an example of the individualized feedback for the listening section of the test. Would you like to read out the
about
feedback?
Your English for this test taker? It says, you can understand conversations and talks about everyday things well. You can understand main points as well as details. You know enough English words and grammar to follow simple talks and conversations. However, work on listening for how speakers feel about the topic and the reason they're talking too.
Great.
So
and you can see also that each test taker, no matter if they're getting the same CEFR level for a specific part of the test, the feedback is based on the skills in that area and the things that they did well and the things that they need to improve. So you might have two test takers who both got an A2 on the reading section, but they're going to get completely different feedback because that's based on their individual performance. And also the things to do, the activities, is also based on the skills where they might need some improvement. So we try to also think of activities that were designed for this age range, things that they might find interesting or they might want to do in their free time to improve their English skills. So for example, read an English website about your favorite actor, athlete, or musician. Use a dictionary to help you understand new words. Tell a classmate or family member about what you learned. So all of those activities, we wanted to gear them toward test takers at this age range and at this particular level.
Before we move on to the conclusion of the presentation, we have one last poll just to make sure you were paying attention.
Just a little quiz, but don't worry.
So that poll will go live now, and we'll wrap it up here and get ready for your questions. We hope the overview that we have presented here has given you a big picture of what MET Go looks like, what the items are like, how it's designed, and some specific detailed descriptions of each section, as well as some ideas, a glimpse at least of some things that you can do to help your students prepare for those different tasks and parts of the exam. And how to integrate the components of your current curriculum or course book into your teaching in a way that reinforces the specific skills and item types found in MET Go. The highlights of this exam is it's really an innovative multi-level exam, so students can take it more than once and see their progress. It includes a relatable, age-appropriate content, as well as colorful, engaging illustrations. And I think that really makes a difference as students are taking the test and keeping them engaged. It has interesting, motivating tasks. And again, keep them engaged. The flexible scheduling is definitely an easy part of makes the administering the test very simple. It's affordably priced. And one of the things we're most proud of about this test is the personalized score report that everyone gets. And then we have test taker various resources available to support you as a teacher, as well as your students and parents preparing students for this, including the free sample test, the preparation and study materials that are in our online library, as well as the practice test books and teachers answer pack. And finally, again, the individualized feedback that includes suggested practice activities to move forward.
Right.
So our final poll, did everyone get, yep, okay, we got 100% of you said yes. The optional section of the test is the speaking section.
So we're all correct.
First listening, then reading, then writing are all mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, one last, just mention that in your email, you will be getting a survey, a certificate of participation, and a handout that'll include some of the links that we've mentioned or shown you here on the slides. If you're interested in future webinars, you can send a quick email to info@Michigan Assessment, and the practice test books available at the U of M Press are a great resource as well. Mm-hmm. Our final part of the presentation is questions from you. We would love to hear from you. You can type your question in. You can like questions or comments from other people as well.
I think we have a question.
And thank you again. Oh, how much? What's the cost? So that's not a question we can actually answer because it depends on each. The way the test is given is through a licensed or authorized test center, and the test centers set their own prices, and it varies a lot based on the market that they're in, based on the details that we don't have control over on that end.
But it is very affordable in comparison to other tests at this level.
And if you're interested and you aren't yet connected to a test center, there's a link which will be on the handout, but is available on our website. There's a link to a page where you can search for locate a test center near you.
Right.
All right, any other questions?
How long does the 4-part test take? So if you'll remember, the listening, reading, and writing sections of the test are all 30 minutes each. So that's a total of 90 minutes, plus the optional 10 minutes speaking. So in total, it would be 100 minutes.
And the speaking section could be scheduled either right before the rest of it or within a week or so after, within a short period of time after the written part.
Right. So the test takers don't go directly from taking the listening, reading, and writing section directly to the speaking. So they would have a different time slot for that. So it's about an hour and a half, which is a very reasonable amount of time for test takers of this age. Any other questions?
Okay, great. Is there an online version of MET Go?
That is not available at the moment, but it's definitely something that we're moving toward in the near future.
Yes, we are moving in that direction. And as well as moving in the direction of getting some online practice activities that would be a little bit easier to operationalize sooner than the actual online version of the test. Where can you get more? So someone says, where can I get more details about some extra materials for students? So the handout that we will send out has information, has a few links and suggestions for materials. The Ready, Set, Go pages of our website have some preparation materials. And if you have specific questions about, for example, what textbooks might be recommended as being paired with MET Go, you can certainly send email to us at info@michiganassessment.org. We'd be more than happy to, work with you, give you the resources that we have as far as textbooks. Who can take the MET Go?
Who can take MET Go? I mean, technically anybody could take MET Go. It is designed for test takers in that age range from 11 to 15. But some adult test takers might just be starting out on their English language learning journey, and so they're welcome to take MET Go. Really anybody could, or younger students,
right?
Who might be a little bit more advanced and might be ready for MET Go. The content, though, is definitely geared toward some younger students. But yeah, anybody can take it.
Right. There's no reason why, an advanced 8 or 9 or 10-year-old couldn't take it.
Sure.
If they have if they're at least at A1 level and they think they can get there, there's no reason why they can't start out taking that. Okay. Would you like to answer that question about,
personalized feedback is very interesting. Do teachers get a general report about students' performance? So each student in their report will get their own personalized feedback that they're absolutely welcome to come and share with their teacher. We hope that they'll share them with their teachers and take a look at some of the activities and try to integrate those into the classroom. There is not a general report based on all of the students in the classroom, but that's a really interesting idea.
Yes.
That it may be very useful to teachers, and it's something that we can definitely consider developing based on all of the students in that particular
right.
test
If
center
you are,
class
if you have a school or a class and you want to see, well, which skill was the strongest overall, for
Right.
example. Yeah. So right now that would be available only by getting the students to share their
right. Exactly.
or the test center would have the ability to share that about groups of students.
Right.
Yeah. How much is an examiner paid?
That also depends on the test center. So we can't really answer that just because it really varies depending on centers. And we have centers in all different countries and areas of the world, and they all have their own economies and their own forms of payment. So it's difficult to answer that question.
And then does a student receive a certificate? Yes, they do.
They receive the score report, right, which contains their, so this would be the score report or the certificate. So that contains their scores for each of the sections, their overall score, their name, the country that they're from, the city, the date that they took the test, and also the personalized feedback, which will be found on the back of the report.
Yeah. Does MET Go last forever or for a period of years? Oh, the score. I think they mean the score.
That's not really, I mean, it's a multi-level test, and so it's not like a certificate test where they're going for a certain level, like a B1, and if they pass, then that certificate is valid forever, like some of our other tests, ECCE and ECPE. With a multi-level test, it's really about the student's progress. And so, if they've gotten an A2, then you would expect that they're probably progressing in their skills. And so maybe in a couple years, they might be at a different level. So I would say, it's a multi-level test and they should take the test as many times as they want to in order to progress and show what level they have.
There's no expiration date on the score, if that's the question.
No.
But of course, if an 11-year-old takes the test and gets an A2, and then they're 18 and they haven't studied English, we don't know what their level would be.
Right.
So I think it would really depend on the use of the organization that's looking at that score.
Exactly. Right.
There's definitely no expiration date. Great questions. Thank you for all your questions. There maybe there'll be one more coming in. I usually see a worker, but I think at this point we are just about ready to sign off. We wanted to again thank you for participating. Thank you for your interest in MET Go. There are a couple of links on this last slide. Don't feel like you need to write them down, but if you are interested in finding the sample test, if you haven't found that yet, you can go to our test takers portion of the website under MET Go. You can find the sample test, which is downloadable.
And if you have any colleagues or just anyone that you think might be interested in learning more about MET Go, we're actually going to have another webinar with the same content on Wednesday this week. And so please encourage anyone to register for that. And we're happy to speak more about MET Go and bring your questions. Thank you so much.
All right. It looks like no more questions. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Done.